All right, well, welcome back to our update on my master's journey. Today, I want to talk about two more books on LDS culture, history, those kinds of things that I'm reading for my Mormonism class, which all starts next week. So next week we'll start our updates on the classes. So we'll be right in. We got 2 weeks off basically, and we're back at it now. So, one of the books that we read for that Mormonism class was a really fun book to read, kind of a different perspective, was called American Scripture. This is a book that is describing, so basically what it is the author, I can't remember off the top of my head who it is, but in this book, American Scripture, the author says, let's take some of these religions that have started in America, and let's examine and be able to kind of see back to back different types of inspired writings that they're getting from these religions. So these are lots of different kinds of religions, um, just different scriptures from different things. Some of them are religions that had been around for a little while, but then there was somebody in America who received a revelation that was accepted as canon for that church. In fact, let me see if I can pull it up really quick and give you some examples of some of these writings that we had in this. It was just interesting to see these comparisons. Of course, they actually had Mormonism so the Book of Mormon was in this as part of one of these books of scripture or divine revelations that have been given to people in America. There was one about the warning to Latter-day Saints, ninth book of Esdras, the occult life of Jesus of Nazareth, the science and health with key to the scriptures. This was, if you remember, Mary Baker Eddy did that one. And so we got to read, we didn't read the whole book, but like excerpts of these. The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ, the autobiography by Jesus of Nazareth, was one of them. The Woman's Bible, actually, there is a thing called the Woman's Bible. That was a really fun read to look at. This was created in the late 1800s, basically, by, let's see, Elizabeth Stanton. And it's not so much a Bible written from a woman's perspective. It's more of the Bible with a commentary from a woman's perspective in it. So that was fun. I might actually try to find that whole book and read that one at some point. That was kind of a fun one to look at. Let's see, what are some of the other ones? The Life and Morals of Jesus of Nazareth. This was interesting because this is Thomas Jefferson's Bible. So Thomas Jefferson was not a huge fan of Christianity. He believed Jesus was a good philosopher, and so what he did was he took the Bible, he kind of took the New Testament and basically cut all the stuff about divinity and things out and just narrowed it down to a very small amount of teachings from Jesus Christ. And that was it. So he kind of cut out the divinity side of Christ and just focused on the teaching side of Christ. And that's it. That was his Bible, basically. So he completely reshaped the whole Bible, cut lots of books out and other things, and focused it down to have his own Bible. Not unlike Marcion did in the early days of the church, not to mention William Tyndale did a translation that he preferred and other things like that. So these were interesting to go through these scriptures and see, okay, these are different types of scripture or interpretations of scripture that other religions have used. To put this with the Book of Mormon was really fascinating. I noticed a lot of these. In my mind, it kind of felt like there was different categories of types of scripture. Some of them were around like this is a revelation that someone got. They claimed to have seen, a vision either in a dream, or they had a waking vision, or like an angel appeared to them and gave them things to write down or told them things so they could write it down. Some kind of a divine manifestation that is the reason that they got the scripture. A lot of those articles of scripture that we had in this book, those excerpts that we had, read like the old Bible. It was interesting because I remember, as I was reading them, I'm like, That's out of the Old Testament. That's out of the Old Testament. That's out of the New Testament. That's out of the Old Testament. That, I so as I'm reading it, I'm thinking of the themes and the messages that they're talking about in the scriptures. They were already in the scriptures. They're already in the Bible. Basically, I can point to those same themes and ideas, and it's not to say that just because the theme was restated, it doesn't mean that it was a copy from the Bible. But when I think of scripture, God, and this might sound strange, but from an economics standpoint, if you think about Revelation, okay, God is putting an effort into, I need to reveal something to these people. I need to tell an angel to go down and do this, or I need to enact this vision or help these people gain some extra insight or things to help them out. And then if God's going to go through that kind of effort, like all that effort to send a message to us on this earth that he wants us to write down and then distribute to the world to read, shouldn't it be something new? Like that contributes to what we already know? I mean, what's the point of God revealing the same thing again? Like almost word for word or almost concept by concept. Now, some of you might push back on that and say, well, but Curtis, there's lots of, in a way, repeat prophecies from the Old Testament. If you look at Jeremiah and Isaiah and Ezekiel, Zechariah and some of these other ones, there's some repeat in there. And I would say, yeah, there is. There's some repeat in there, but they're not all the exact same. There are some that have some variance and difference to them. So they're talking about the same topic, like the second coming. There's lots of scripture around the second coming. They have similar themes, but they give a little bit different perspective. So when you take all of them together, you get a more full perspective. A lot of these scriptures didn't do that. They just gave the same perspective of the Bible. So they're not contributing to the message, not contributing to new things. Now, some of these writings that we had in here are not, we can't think of them that way. We can't evaluate them in the same way because they are very different. Like we could do things like the autobiography of Jesus of Nazareth. That was interesting. And you're like, wait, did you just say autobiography of Jesus? Yeah, autobiography means it's the story of Jesus's life that Jesus wrote down. This text was published in 1870 by Olive Pettis. It's an interesting read, but again, it doesn't help us really understand Jesus any more than we already have. It's not like it's new information that suddenly is amazing. It didn't come across as like, oh, this is some new things. Even the scriptures, the unknown life of Jesus Christ, that was another one. Let's see, this one, where did it come from? Nicholas Notovich in 1850s, Russian war correspondent, claimed to have heard rumors of a great prophet named Isa during his travels in India and Kashmir. And so this is a fun story to hear. This guy, who's a Russian war correspondent, claims on his journeys in India and through Kashmir that he heard that there was the writings of this prophet Isa about Jesus Christ. And he had writings that nobody else had about Jesus. So he claims that he went and sought these writings out and he was able to get them. Let's see, what did it say here? In one of the spiritual centers of Tibetan Buddhism, where he was shown a book called The Life of Saint Isa. Convinced that this Isa was in fact Jesus Christ, Notovich had a translator help him record the book as it was read aloud to him. The resulting volume was published in French in 1894, but almost immediately created sensation throughout the West. Within a year, 8 editions appeared in French, 4 in English, 1 each in German, Spanish, and Italian. The problem is there's no, when these claims come out, this is kind of an interesting idea because scholars will say, okay, if you have a claim, like this guy says, I went and I translated some ancient writings from India. So scholars would say then, where in India was this? Who did you talk to? Let's go independently verify that this is true. And there was a gentleman who was a scholar of India and renowned Indologist, Max Muller, and he is like, baloney, this doesn't exist. And so some of these people will create these sensational stories, but then never back up the story. They're just hoping you ignore that fact. that, oh, the story sounds so sensational, I don't need to fact check this. Well, when they fact checked him, they couldn't prove the story. He didn't give them enough information to help with it. So you kind of have to look at it and go, okay, was that really there or was that fake? So there's some of those that were not that amazing. It's like, okay, this is probably some rendition, somebody else's opinion, ideas, nothing new. There's just lots of different things like this that was in this book. So if you want to read it, American Scripture is the name of the book. In fact, let me pull up the Anthology of Sacred Writings. This is Laurie F. Mayfly Kipp is the author of this book. It was a really good book. I would recommend reading it. It was a fun one to get into. Now, the other one that I wanted to talk about too is called People of Paradox. This is from Terrell Givens. This is a history of Mormon culture. If you want to see Mormonism and kind of understand the culture, so there's the Mormon church and then there's Mormon culture. If you want to see the culture, this is a great book to read. If you're not a member of the church, but you want to understand more of the behind the scenes kind of church culture, and a lot of this stuff is things that active members of the church, especially in Utah and Idaho and those areas close to Salt Lake, you can probably say some of this would be in like California and other places too. This is stuff that the average Mormon will be familiar with, but maybe doesn't realize is there because they live in the culture. It's just there. It's like asking a fish, do they know that they're swimming in water? It's just there. It's just part of what they do. They don't think about it. So if you're Mormon and you read this, you might be like, I don't know about that. I'm not sure about that. It's there. This culture's there. If you're a non-Mormon and you want to look at understanding the culture of Mormonism, not just the religious side, but the culture of the people. What is this culture that has been evolving and adjusting over time? This book was a really good book. I really enjoyed this book. This is probably the first book from Terrell Givens that I've read. He's written a lot of books, and so hopefully I'll get to some of his other works as well. This one was just such an interesting read, very different. I will warn you on this book too. Terrell Givens is a big scholar. He's really good at his research and what he does. There are spots in this book that you're going to be like, oh man, Terrell, you're using some big words. You're getting into this. It's not quite to the level of Jesus to Christ with Talmage, but there's a few times in this book I'm like, ooh, that's, if you're not in the scholarly side of things, if you're just an average person, not really trying to do a lot of deep research or used to that kind of language, it's going to be hard to read. Probably similar to if you've tried to pick up a Hugh Nibley book and read it. There's some things in there that you're like, it's not quite that bad, but it's almost there, where it's almost a scholarly work rather than something written for the average person to read. But it's a good book. It really was a good book about Mormon culture that was so fascinating to just think about and go through. I'm looking forward to discussing that book more in our class. So that'll be good. Those are the two other books I've read for this class. I did find out there's another book I'm supposed to read for this class, so I've got one more book to read, and I will bring that up in a future video and talk about that book. It's a biography of a woman in the late 1800s. She grew up late 1800s, early 1900s, and it's a biography about her and even being in polygamous relationships and things like that too. So that'll be a fun one to get into. So hopefully you've enjoyed these. If you have questions about some of these books or ideas, let me know. These will be fun. I would recommend them. I thought they're fun. I'm looking forward to discussing them through the next 14 weeks of our class. So I look forward to seeing you next week as I give you the first update for fall semester.